This is so people can attend the session who weren't able to make it right now. And we'll post the recording and the slides of the session on the CTLT website. That link will be in the resources that we'll follow up this session with. If you haven't done so already, please fill out the attendance form so that we can send you these resources after the session. So I'll quickly go over the guidelines, our expectations for you as participants in this session. It's a pretty full session with 50 people attending. We do expect you to tune in and participate fully when we ask you to do some activities that we'll go through later. If you need to step away, please use the reactions button to mark your status as away. So the reactions button is here, again, circling in blue. Whoops. Use that reactions button to set yourself as away if you need to step out for a bathroom break or to grab a glass of water or a snack. That's fine with us. Thanks, Austin. Other guidelines and expectations we have for today. We ask you to keep your mics on silent when you're not speaking. We turned off video sharing for the main room just to conserve bandwidth for everyone because it is a large session. If you would like to speak, we absolutely do encourage your contributions today. We ask you to use the raise hand feature before speaking. This is down at the bottom of your screen. It's the little icon with a raised hand where you can also set your statuses. It's just to the right of that. And we're going to ask everyone to have respect for the contributions of your peers today. This is very much a peer-driven workshop, so we're counting on everyone to leverage their experience and their knowledge to share and help us develop a really informative session today. So we're going to run through some polls now. Polling is a good feature. Oh, Kaylin, yep. What's your question?
Nope, sorry, hit the wrong button.
All right, I'm glad that the raise hand feature works. Thanks. Here is our first poll. So polling is a good way to get the sense of a whole room. The first question is, how do you feel about online discussions? And I'll start the poll now. You feel confident about online discussions, neutral or not confident about online discussions? I love seeing a really good mix, right, of feelings around this issue. Hopefully we can leverage all levels of experience with online discussions today. I can see that about 11 people haven't responded to the poll right now, so I'll ask you to respond, please. And I'll also set up the next poll. So the next poll is, how much experience do you have with online discussions? Do you have a lot of experience, some experience, or no experience at all? Personally, I'll share with you that before March of this year, I had very little experience with online discussions. Great, thank you for responding to that poll. Final question I have for you today is, when you do run your classes that have discussion components, how many students normally do you have in those classes? So are we talking about really, really large classes? Are we talking about very small seminar style classes where you have just 1 to 10 students? Personally, in my department, I run classes between 10 and 20 students. Yeah, Layla.
Yeah, it would be nice if you had an option for not applicable because I don't have any experience as TA, so none of these applies to me. So for someone that hasn't any experience with being a TA, none of these applies. So maybe adding another choice that's not applicable or might be good.
Well, thank you for that feedback, Layla. Yeah, we recognize that some people might be joining us who haven't been the TA of a class yet, but we do hope that this session will be useful for everyone who's currently a TA and who will be a TA in the future. All right, thank you everyone for participating in these polls. I'm gonna end the polling now. And it seems like we actually have a wide range again of people who have large classes and small classes. All right, so we recognize that, like Layla brought up, there is a wide range of experiences, and that means a wide range of concerns and ideas about online discussion. So if you have any burning questions, things that you absolutely want to address today, please post them into the chat now. We'll take note of those. Hopefully we can get to a lot of them today, and we'll also have a question period where we can talk about them later in the session. Can we share the results of the poll? That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that question. It's not something that I've encountered before. So
I don't think it saves them. They're gone.
all right, I'd love to see these burning questions coming in. We have questions about using Collaborate Ultra for practice. Please see the links that Carissa is sending into the chat for more information about these online platforms. Great. Thank you, Denali, for sharing your answer around those polls. I'll definitely incorporate that in the future. And thank you, Eric, also. Some tricks for initiating student participation in discussions, especially when students are formative. Yeah, this is a great question from you, Erica. How do we build community so that students feel comfortable, right, in an online environment? You have to do that in an in-person environment as well. How can we make them feel natural? That's a good question from you, Sean. Often your question about on class versus online discussion, yeah, we can talk about that as well. All right, thanks everyone. If you think about something else, please take a note of it so we can come back to it later. We want to get to all of these. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Austin now, who's going to go over our goals for today.
Thanks, Jacob. I really like to see some of those burning questions come in, talking about the, who is it there, asking about the differences between discussions in class and online, and that's actually one of our learning objectives for today. So we're here to identify what makes online discussion effective for learners and what that might look like in comparison to our face-to-face discussions, and to sort of describe our role as a TA in leading online discussions, both in an asynchronous and synchronous format. We all run very different tutorials or lectures as TAs, depending on what our roles are. So hopefully we can find something unique to ourselves and applicable to whatever our own context is or might be in the future. And lastly, we want to identify some practices or strategies that we might be able to to use to overcome some of those difficulties that we might have in our courses as TA, either current or again any planned ones for the future. So before we dive into a lot of the material, I want to make sure we're all on the same page with what we're defining as asynchronous and synchronous online discussions. And that's really sort of changed in the last decade or so. Traditionally, asynchronous online discussions were where not every learner is online simultaneously. And this was at the opposite spectrum from synchronous, where all learners were online simultaneously and could communicate freely at any given moment. However, with smartphones being around and the advent and accessibility of communication, this has really become a lot more of a time continuum between these two modes of online learning. So when we think about synchronous and asynchronous discussions, just keep in mind that some forms of asynchronous might be very different from other forms. And we often think so discussions as being in a verbal format from being in a classroom, but discussion can be happening in both verbal or written forms. And often what we'll see on the next slide is asynchronous is often a place for slower, more complex contributions, where synchronous often facilitates immediate and more often simple contributions. Oh, the highlighting didn't show up here. Okay, so there's quite a large table here, and this is just as a bit of a resource for you as we move into the second part. But a few things I want to highlight from this table that we see under asynchronous on the left. We see reflection popping up quite a bit, and we see people working on complex issues. And a lot of the reasons why students are taking often in asynchronous courses, sometimes it's because of scheduling. They have work or family, other commitments. So it's important to be aware of these things when we're facilitating these discussions. Things that might resemble this are discussion boards or blogs, and activities might be asking students to reflect individually on course topics and maintain those blogs. At the other end of the spectrum is synchronous e-learning, where we are often discussing less complex ideas that don't require that sort of in-depth thought and detailed formulated answers. But there's also a social aspect to it too. And that's to get students acquainted, plan and divide tasks that they might complete on their own time. And it really helps with commitment and motivation of students. There's often group work that's facilitated in these sessions, and this is what we're doing right now, using more of a video conferencing style of lecturing. So there's a multitude of tools, and we're not going to cover any in vast detail in this workshop, but a few that are here just to inspire and get your creative juices flowing on what you might want to use are a few resources here in this table and a brief description of what they are. And these can be used in synchronous or asynchronous formats. I am going to post that link because you won't be able to click it, but I would like you, if possible later on, to copy the link, see if there's anything on the website as we work through part of our activity later on. The Faculty of Arts has a really great website full of a lot of tools that can be used for facilitating either learning or discussions online. So if there's something on there, if you click on each of those tools, there are both advantages and disadvantages and detailed descriptions that they give. Yes, Erica.
Yeah, I was just wanting to double check that these are all approved for use at UBC. I know sometimes there's some rules around what we're allowed to use as TAs.
Yeah, so actually if you go to that Faculty of Arts website, it actually lists which are approved under the Freedom of Information and Protection Act. There's a really good description under there. Often we're allowed to use things that are hosted on US servers as TAs. I'm not an expert in this realm, and I don't want to dive into it too deep. You just have to be very conscious of student confidentiality. So if they can use these in an anonymous format, it's usually okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to be using breakout groups today in Collaborate Ultra. Two major tools that we'll be using are Collaborate Ultra, which we're on right now, and within Collaborate Ultra we'll be using polls, audio and video, statuses, chat, annotation tools, and breakout rooms. We've had a good chunk of this used already, and we've only been in the session for 20 minutes. So quite a variety of tools we can use to interact. And the second one we're going to use is Google Jamboard in a little bit, which Jacob will give us an overview of. So within Collaborate Ultra, we're going to be using smaller breakout groups so that you can each communicate individually in groups of 4 today. And individuals can move around between groups, and as an instructor, you can move people between these groups. So what are some of these tools that are available to us in Collaborate Ultra? You might have explored around a little bit when you were first waiting for the session to start, but just a reminder, we have our microphone on and off, webcam on and off. You can raise your hand, which I've seen lots of you doing. And then some more functionality comes over on the right-hand side. If you don't see this menu yet, there's likely a little purple tab, but instead of being X there's 2 arrows, and that'll expand this out. We've got a chat, and you can have direct messages as well as chats to the whole, to everyone, or to just your group that you're in. And under the participants tab, you can see other participants. The share content is where you'll be able to send, or sorry, participants is, I'm getting mixed up now. Share content is where you actually initiate breakout groups from. And we'll be doing that later on. We should have it selected so that you can move about between your breakout groups. One limitation is if you do have connectivity issues and you get booted out, it will rejoin you to the main room. So we're going to try and set it up so that you can move about groups. So in case you do get removed from your group, you should be able to rejoin that same group. But do message into the main chat, and either Jacob or I or Carissa will help you find your way back to your group if you get lost. And the settings tab you will be using later on as well for an icebreaker within your small group, which I think Jacob is going to cover after this. Is there anything I have forgotten here, Jacob? Anything?
I don't think so, Austin. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to send a poll right now asking if anyone has felt left behind on any of these features that we're talking about on Collaborate Ultra. And it's also going to allow me to practice showing the poll to the audience. All right. Oh, I'm so grateful to see the responses that are coming in. I'm going to give it a few more seconds, and then I'll show the responses to everyone in the room right now. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so everyone should be able to see the responses to the poll right now. Great. Thanks to those of you who created that learning moment for me today. Austin, I'm going to take it away from here, yeah, and talk about the Google Jamboard activities.
Yep, that'd be great.
Awesome. All right, thanks for that question, Sahar. We're taking note of all of your burning questions that you're posting in chat so that if we don't feel like we addressed them adequately today, we can put some resources up on the slides that will be uploaded to the CTLT website. Okay, so we're going to move into breakout groups for basically the rest of the session until we bring it all back for a debrief at the end. The breakout groups are going to be small groups, and in those groups you're going to be using Google Jamboard to complete some activities. So Google Jamboard is basically a whiteboard app that lets you post sticky notes and draw on the same page in real time as your other group members. So I'd like you all to open this Google Drive folder right now. I'm posting the link into the chat. You should be able to see all of the Jamboards in that folder. You'll be assigned to a Jamboard based on the group that you're in. So don't worry about opening the Jamboards now, but wait until you get assigned to a breakout group. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can walk through the main features that you need to use a Jamboard. And I'm going to start screen sharing right now. All right. So this is the Google Drive folder. You're going to click on the Group 1 discussion Jamboard if you're in Group 1. And you're going to see it's divided into quadrants. You can post comments to the Jamboard by clicking on the sticky note. So this will allow you to type a comment into the sticky note. You can also choose the color of the sticky note. And you can save it and move this sticky note to wherever you want it to be on the board. You can make it larger.
Hey, Jacob.
Hey, what's up?
I think it opened up a new tab and the screen sharing is just on the Drive folder.
Oh, that's right. I'll have to share another tab. Thanks, Austin. All right. So you can click on the sticky note to write a comment. You can also change the color of the sticky note. And you can move the sticky note around on the screen. You can also resize the sticky note by dragging on the blue corners. So you're going to be using these sticky notes to share your comments with your teammates and build a collaborative Jamboard that contains a lot of ideas. I'm going to stop sharing now. And we're going to go back to our presentation.
Where on this discussion board is the sticky note?
The sticky note will be in the side panel. Here, I'll. Thanks for your question. Hi, that's a great question, Micah. This is a free Google tool to use. So, in your breakout groups, you're going to brainstorm through these questions. But first, you're going to do an icebreaker. We're going to share a presentation to all of your breakout groups that has all of these instructions in the slideshow so that you can move through the slides at your own pace. If you get disconnected, you'll be reconnected to the main room, but we'll help you find your way back to your group. So, Austin, at this point, we're going to send them into their breakout groups. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just want to mention where you can find the files is using that little square in the bottom right. There's the square with the bent arrow in it. There should be some files visible to you in there, and there should be one called instructions for breakout groups. So maybe before we send everyone apart, should we run a poll and make sure everyone can access that file? I will start that now. Okay, perfect. That is what we're here for. Oh, we've got one person. Okay, so if we go into the bottom right, I believe from your view it should be under the square box with the curved arrow inside of it, and their files should be visible in there.
We're going to share this file to the breakout groups as well, so you don't have to download it right now.
Okay, maybe we can just add this to the we'll add a set of slides into the folder through which you'll all be accessing your Jamboard. And so at the top of the folder, there'll be instructions there as well. I can sort that out right now.
So welcome back to the main room. I hope you enjoyed the breakout session. We're going to move into the next part of our session now, which is going to be a dive into what the wonderful ideas are that you came up with on your Jamboards. So this activity is called a gallery tour. We're going to look through these Jamboards. We're going to lead the tour. And we're going to see the solutions and barriers that everyone raised that might be very common to what we're all experiencing. This is going to be a more open discussion. So if you see something that you want to discuss, please use the raise your hand feature to let us know that you have something to share with the whole group. Austin, are we good to share the Jamboard now?
Yep, sharing now.
Great, thank you.
All right. Does everyone have access? Let's start a poll here. Everyone should be able to see this. So on the top left hand of your screen, there should be a square with a little magnifying glass in it. If you have difficulty reading what is in this panel, you can zoom in and zoom out, and this won't affect what others see. This is just on your screen. So if you can zoom in to the center of this placemat, what we can see is this group's main points. Let's all take a second to read these. So student engagement is certainly a challenging aspect of online discussions. Does anyone want to volunteer any contributions on how they might increase student engagement in discussions? Yeah, Galen.
Hi. So I think just in the couple of sessions that I've attended this week, I think the use of polls and kind of like checking for kind of people's readiness to move on, and yeah, just kind of like asking the questions and the nonverbal communication. I feel like compared to how engaged my students were in the spring, like that, incorporating that into like my sessions in the fall would be a lot more effective than what I was doing before.
Yeah, certainly. That sounds like a great point. I don't know what everyone else's experiences are like, but getting a first year biology student I know can be quite challenging to interact in person. It's quite painful at times, sometimes as a TA, and it's even more difficult online to have them turn off or turn on their microphones. So the polling features we can really take advantage of and try and tweak our discussions to navigate through polls. Yeah, Estella. Go ahead, Estella. You might need to unmute your mic, possibly, if it's still muted. Okay, it's saying 2 more hands are raised. I can't see whose hands those are, but if someone,
Do you hear me?
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead, please.
sorry. So I'm teaching a class of 20 people, a communication course. So I'm both the instructor as well as some kind of a TA. So a small class like that in the summer is still manageable. and even like in the whole class instead of the breakout. But I'm not sure, if the class size increases like in September, when we are going to have like 35 or 40 students, for communication courses. So that's why right now I'm using Canvas discussion board and the modules, whatever, to compensate, to complement each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Estella. Anyone else to add on that, or Erica and Kashemta? Apologies if I'm not saying your name correctly. Do you have anything to add, or something different?
Hi there, it's Shamta, the K is silent.
Thanks, Shamta. Please go ahead.
I just had one more thing. It might be more time consuming for the TA, but one-on-one connections with students really work for them to really motivate them and encourage them to participate in bigger gatherings. I find if I make that one-on-one connection outside of the discussions, then that really prompts them to discuss and raise their hands during online discussions.
Thanks, Shamta. I wonder if you would share an example of a way you've made a one-to-one connection, or you could imagine a one-to-one connection with students and TAs happening outside of the classroom and online.
Yeah, I try and connect with them either via email or I used to do these one-on-one check-ins where students can sign up for like a 15 to 20-minute meetup with me, and they can come and chat about what's going on and how they're struggling with what's going on. So that really makes that connection for the rest of the term.
Great, thank you. Austin, should I take us to the next Jamboard?
Yeah, let's go on to the next Jamboard.
All right, so let's take a look at this Jamboard here. I'm looking at the green sticky, providing the whole picture of the discussion plan before the session, reminding the students how much time we'll be spending on each step, and asking the students to share their videos during the session. So one of the best practices that we try to demonstrate in these online sessions, like during these workshops this week, is to be very clear about what the intentions of the discussion are going to be at the very start. So I'm glad that this group appreciated that. I also wonder, this problem of motivation that's raised by Sarah on the yellow sticky. How are we going to motivate students to stay engaged throughout discussions? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, Erica.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, now that I'm thinking about this, I'm not sure if this would help with motivation, but someone in our group had a really good idea to ask students to turn on their video at certain parts of the discussion. And again, I know this would be pending the size of the group. But we all thought that that might be a good idea, just to like check in and make sure that they're not tuned in elsewhere, but actually tuned in with that specific discussion. I know that might bring up some privacy issues, though, maybe if people don't want to have their videos on, but yeah, that might be one way to help increase participation, because it kind of gives people motivation to actually be in the here and now.
Great, thanks, Erica. Yeah, I mean, video chat can be a blessing and also a curse sometimes. So it's good to experiment with it when it's right to use it. Collaborate Ultra limits the number of videos that you can see at one time. So if you are interested in having a larger scale video chat, Zoom is the best option. And Zoom has been working on privacy features, and UBC ISNT does have a document of best practices that apply to Zoom because it's obviously a US company. Sarah, participation points. Everyone has to send in something they wrote or of their contributions. Yeah, we like to do some independent reflection time in these sessions, and to actually see whether students are engaging with the material. It would be useful for them to maybe send in a document proving that they actually took the time to reflect. So the challenge of this will be scaling, right? Going through, for example, if you're running a class of 100+ students, going through all of these one time, that's a good idea. Thanks. Let's move on to the next Jamboard. I'll put the link to all the Jamboards again in the session. This is, I think, a great shared resource to get ideas storms and go through their own time as well.
Oh, sorry.
All right, I also see, again, encouraging the use of cameras by having a show and tell session at the beginning. I'm going to ask everyone to go through a poll right now. Did you enjoy the icebreaker that we did today in the groups? This is something that we came up with for this session, and it's not something we've done before, so we'd like to know your thoughts on this. I'll let everyone respond, and then I'll share the responses with the whole group. All right, thanks for responding to the poll. I'll open up the responses to everyone now. So I'm interested to hear maybe one person yes and one person who said no, what your thoughts on using this kind of icebreaker was in terms of facilitating discussion today. Did it improve it, and did it block it? And Sarah, I pointed out those might be intrusive, especially depending on the space that people are in, and then there can be technological issues as well.
Absolutely, I agree with that again, Sarah. We try to set it up to just take a small item from within the space to alleviate that. But of course, there's different degrees, and again, the tech is challenging. But we're trying to make a setting or an effort at creating some sort of a sense of community online, which can be a challenging barrier to overcome with discussion.
Another one here is to use the reactions to make sure people are still following along. And then to call people by names. So calling people by name, I think, is a really good way to create that one-to-one engagement with your students so that they do feel seen and heard. It reduces that degree of anonymity, right? That can be pretty prevalent in online situations. All right, let's move on to the next Jamboard. We have a time for a few more, I think. Austin, do you want to talk about what you see here?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this in-person contact and communication, along with some technical difficulties, doing mathematical modeling tools online, absolutely, depending on what you have available for your discipline. It looks like nothing came up though from these mathematical modeling tools. Does anyone have any ideas or contributions that might be an option for discussion when you need access to maybe difficult resources? Is there anyone by any chance in the math department who's teaching online? I can share some of my personal experiences. I don't have to model um, technical mathematical modeling, but I do sometimes in a genetics course right now have to model chromosomes and cell divisions and things of the sort, which does involve a lot of drawing and often working on pen and paper. Um, we've been having students communicate and discuss through often drawing on a piece of paper and taking a picture and uploading it. Or as well as if you're an instructor and you're working through problems, having a lot of visual aids pre-prepared instead of drawing them in real time can help save a ton of time and has really facilitated some discussion or made that easier with pre-drawn features that students can then annotate and work with. Has anyone else had similar experiences that they would like to share? Yeah, Sarah.
So last term, one of our instructor used her own whiteboard at home and shared the videos of writing, shared the videos while she was writing the mathematical modeling and equations. So I thought that was kind of like the same experience that I had in the class, and I found it very useful.
Oh, that's awesome. It really, I guess that depends on your home office setup, but definitely a way to get things done. Um, if there's no other points about this Jamboard, let's move on to the next. Fortunately, we have a sticky hidden behind there, but let's take a moment to read what's in the center of the placemat. Is anything standing out from this placemat that anyone would like to chat about?
I see one. I mean, the general question about breakout groups and what they're good for and what they're not good for, I think is a good point to raise. So I think sending participants into breakout groups with a clear sense of purpose is a great idea. Sending them into breakout groups without a clear sense of purpose might lead to a drop in engagement. Here, let's do another poll because I'm just very addicted to this feature right now. When we sent you into the breakout groups, did you have a clear sense of purpose about what you were there to do? This is good feedback for us as well. So I'm going to share the responses once a lot of people have participated in this poll. All right, I'm going to share the responses with everyone now. So it's true, the clarity of instructions can always be improved. So this is something that I think is good feedback for us, and that I'm going to continue working on for sure.
And just a note on that for facilitating discussion, some of you may have noticed how awkward it can be at times when two people try to speak at the same time. I found that the breakout groups are most effective if there's a max of 4 participants in each group. Beyond that, the discussion starts to get a little bit hindered, at least the verbal discussion. All right, let's take a quick look at one more Jamboard before we end this gallery tour. Just a note about the PDFs. Yes, what you can do within Google is if they're all within a folder, you can download the folder. It'll give you a zipped file, which when you unzip will have multiple PDFs in it. And we just merged all those PDFs to one, uploaded it back into Collaborate Ultra, and we can walk through them together. On that note, I think if there's nothing else coming out of this Jamboard, are there any points that anyone wants to add before we end this Jamboard walk? Absolutely, Sarah. So how might we have altered this? Say you're in the same sort of position. How might you change things around? So if you were to run this exercise, what might we do differently next time? Labeling each sticky note with their names? Absolutely. I know it can be challenging you're talking on one platform and working on another, but we could have a personal color, yeah, or even just stick a name in each quadrant. And that would really help with the discussion so we know who's contributing what into the discussion, because I think that's a very vital point for these discussions. So I'm just going to upload now. Right. Names sometimes can sometimes be challenging with the because we are on US servers, but typically if you just use a first name or initials, you are still protecting student privacy. So just be conscious of those rules when you are using these tools. Sharing files. So, yeah, go ahead.
What Austin is getting ready right now is some of the burning questions that we talked about and got you to contribute at the beginning of the session. These Jamboards we're going to make available on the CTLT session website along with the slides and a recording of this session. So you can look at the Jamboards there later. Yeah.
So sorry this one isn't as clean and elegant, organized, but these are a few questions that have come up that came up earlier on that I've copied and pasted over into here. So I guess we can work through from the top down. We can annotate as we go. Yes, we've covered that first one. So when you do a poll, you can, in the poll, hit hide responses or show responses at the bottom of it, and that will show it to everyone else. In the second part, Collaborate Ultra, I don't think it's open to everyone. If you're a student in any classes or an instructor, often some instructors have set up student chat rooms that they can use at any given point. So these are just 24-hour, always open sessions. And you can go in and play with functionalities in some of those. If you're not enrolled as a student or instructor in any of those courses, I don't think there's any way, but there are workshops that Krissa is sharing right now for teaching tools.
Erica said she'd love to learn some tricks for initiating student participation in discussions when students are feeling tentative in a new online environment. I completely relate with this one. I think that this comfort is going to be built up over time as students get used to the technology and the platform and also used to each other. So let's be realistic about some of the barriers, right? Let's be realistic about the fact that even in face-to-face classrooms, students often come in as strangers and they need to develop those relationships in order to feel comfortable to contribute. everyone who has been a TA is familiar with the icy cold silence at the start of the semester. By the end of the semester, things do warm up. Now we're adding in a different barrier, which is the online environment. Technologies and tools that students aren't going to be 100% familiar with yet, but that familiarity will build over time. So we're looking at two things, right? We're looking at comfort with technology and comfort with each other. So I think that the Jamboards are offering some really good thoughts on this. So please take the time to review them after this session. Really good point. Thank you, Erica. This next one, what's the difference between online class and online discussion? I want to use this question as an opportunity to speak to a point that Jillian raised earlier. So Jillian is president of CUPE, right? Jillian raised the point that TAs don't have the responsibility for ultimately making choices about what technologies are going to be used in the course. Thanks for raising this point, Jillian. This is the responsibility of the instructor. TAs aren't here to design courses. TAs aren't here to take on that kind of labor. But it helps to have a good sense of what the technology's capabilities are, right? So things like polls and things like running breakout groups. This is kind of technological literacy that will help with being a TA. So online discussion and online class, I would say that the class is the responsibility of the instructor, but the discussion is going to be the responsibility of the TA. The shape of the discussion, that's going to be the responsibility of the instructor, but the actual discussion itself is going to be the responsibility of the TA. So if the instructors do ask you to help with designing and choosing the tools, this is a question that I think should best be handled by Jillian. But Jillian, could you please put your email into the chat so that people who have questions about this can contact you?
Or a general CUPE contact as well.
Yes, thanks.
May I interrupt for just a second to speak to what Sohar number 2 said?
Absolutely.
Sure, that's fine with us.
Okay, hi. Some of you may have already heard my voice. I was in the very well facilitated discussion yesterday, and I was in one this morning, which was also really fantastic. So shout out to CTLT, always putting on fantastic sessions for us as TAs. Sahar, and I hope I'm saying your name right, has said, but the instructors have asked us to help with designing and choosing the tools. Yes, sometimes instructors may ask you if you have a preference, what sort of things you're comfortable with, what sort of things you are familiar with, and what things you would like to learn. And when you are so fortunate as to work with an instructor who wants to have that sort of open conversation with TAs, it's always an amazing opportunity to learn more and do more and have a mentor, and it's amazing. That said, significant course construction, so syllabus design, exam creation, module design, things like that, that is not a GTA, a graduate teaching assistant, a UTA, an undergraduate teaching assistant's job. There is a position called senior teaching assistant, which is designed for those of you who want to work very closely on course construction. And if you're interested in classification and the sort of work you're doing, and you've got questions around your labor, I did drop my email in the chat. Please do reach out to me. That being said, TAs have and always will continue to create stuff for their own tutorials. So if you put together some flashcards or a quick lesson plan for your tutorial, that's not the same thing as syllabus design or module design or Canvas setup and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a gray area. And if you have questions or concerns, please do reach out to us. This is what all day, every day, and I'm super happy to talk to anybody. Thank you guys for letting me interrupt.
No problem. Thanks, Jillian. It's important to keep track of those responsibilities that we have and what our rights are as TAs as we transition online. Everyone's in a bit of mode of pandemonium, so it's important to keep those distinctions in mind. I just want to address Constance's question there on the side about the attendance form. I don't think that exact one can be used, but UBC does have access to Qualtrics and other survey software that can be used in your lessons. In terms of strategies for facilitating active learning and discussion online, which Jessica mentioned in these questions, I really implore you to get creative. There may be aspects on the Jamboard there, and we'll share that with everyone after. But get creative. Just because it's designed for in-person doesn't mean you can't adapt it to be effective online. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? All right. So our next question that we had from earlier on that I haven't addressed yet is how to make these discussions more
This
natural.
next one about how to make online.
Oh, go ahead, Jacob.
Thanks, Austin. I see two things here. One, discussions being natural is seen as an advantage or a benefit to actually leading an effective discussion. And then how do we make that happen? So feeling like we're having a natural discussion, I think, can be a result of time, like we talked about earlier. But then also doing things like icebreakers and giving people the space to contribute that they need. And that space might mean giving them 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes, right? You give them 10 minutes in an online situation because things, frankly, maybe a little bit ironically, things take longer when we're online. Did anyone feel natural today? And I'm wondering if you did feel natural, could you share why you think that was? Or if you felt unnatural, why do you think that was? So Sean, you're thinking specifically about asynchronous discussions. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, for example, I'd have students post an answer to a question and on the Canvas discussion board. And the idea is to share it with the other students. But if you say now you have to reply to it or something, then it gets a bit unnatural in the sense that they're not really engaging with it. They're just doing what they're required to do and say, yes, I totally agree. Something, it just doesn't sound that natural. So I guess the idea is, and I guess it varies with different subjects, but in history, somebody posts an answer to some question. How do you get a dialogue out of that?
Yeah, great point, Sean. Then that's I think something
Thanks, Sean.
people in the field of education still struggle with. There's an active area of research about maintaining effective asynchronous discussions, and it's a fine line to balance as an instructor, as a TA, and how often you interject and reply yourself, and what's expected of the students. I think, does anyone have any strategies they might use for that? Okay, great. We have an online.
I'll jump in on this one. Thanks for that article, Mirabel. I think also when it comes to using the discussion boards on Canvas, this is an opportunity for TAs to really model the kind of behavior that they want to see from the students. So just like in a face-to-face classroom, you model the kinds of questions that students are expected to ask of the material. For example, in history, you model the kind of level of engagement with the material that you want your students to show, right? We're not entering the classroom like bored TAs, we're showing some level of excitement. So when we're online as well, for example, on the Canvas discussion boards, posting questions and follow-ups to students students' own contributions on the discussion board can be an effective way to maybe build that rapport. Even asking short questions, right? Like thinking that we're writing stuff down, so it has to be a little bit longer than what we might say in person. Well, let's try to keep it nice and short. Like, what do you think of this? Maybe you're asking a yes or no question. So using your behavior on the discussion boards to model what you want to see out of your students is, I think, something to explore. Is there any sort of community platform where TAs from different departments and facilities can share experiences? Yes. Well, the answer for right now is no. But yeah, put that in the feedback if you want to see that happen. Maybe that's something that can be that we can see too down the pipeline. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Yeah, I'm the senior TA in anthropology, and what we've done is we've created a workshop in September when the students arrive, and we did it, of course, in person. And then we kind of evoked the nasty M word, mandatory, to make TAs participate and group together and share experiences. But I found that they didn't want to. And of course, a lot of our grads are all over the place, but the teaching assistants are on campus. So that was a bit of a frustration. But I think online would be a little easier to do that. But this sort of maybe couple hour session with a faculty member to have an agenda and to offer specific advice for handling the situations we've just talked about for the last 2 hours. That workshop was really useful. That's what we used where I hang out. That and creating a TA
Thanks.
manual. The TA manual becomes kind of a go-to, especially when you find yourself in situations, the odd one where I've had where you take a student, say, through the museum, and they're in tears about how their cultures, material, belongings have been handled. How do you handle that as a teaching assistant? That's really difficult. And of course, the instructor's not there. And so those situations are what you can raise and discuss and get good advice on. That's, I think, a useful part of it.
Thanks, Steve. One thing I want to add in there too is, yeah, creating that community within TAs is challenging. If you're in a larger course, sometimes there are other TAs that you can discuss with, and finding some sort of platform like a Slack or something like that. Slack doesn't meet the FIPA requirements, but you can use it in certain ways. See fit to have those discussions with other TAs and share your experiences and reflect with each other and try and brainstorm solutions. Okay, with that, I think we've answered all the burning questions that are still around. Is there anything sticking out to you still, Jacob?
Let's see here. I want to draw attention to Carissa's comment in the everyone chat. The attendance that you're going to fill out or have already filled out is a great place to put these questions and recommendations for future resources. I think that, like Steve brings up something that's an interdepartmental resource. Let's get your feedback on that and your desires to see that kind of development happen, so we can kind of galvanize departments to take on this development and help create these communities and share these ideas. I really want to see that as well. I don't see any more things to address here. Looking over my own notes. Thanks for sharing that feedback form.
Yeah. Okay, with that, thank you, everyone. Good luck with the online discussions. It's certainly challenging, as we've seen from all these Jamboards, people bringing up all sorts of challenges, but you do have the tools, lots available to you as TAs, and there's a great community of TAs around at UBC and people involved both in the faculties and in CTLT to help you with any challenges you might come across.
Yep, thanks to everyone who attended today. It was really wonderful to see you.